The cover curse is 100% real, y'all. When I first wrote this video over a year ago, I wasn't sure, but since that time a couple of more players have been added to the hit list, and now I just know it's real without a doubt. I'm gonna go ahead and say it before starting, some of these are reaches, yes, and I'm gonna call those out as we get to them, but for the most part I believe this phenomena of the 2K cover curse is pretty credible. So starting with NBA 2K to NBA 2K4, which was actually called ESPN Basketball, I'm not officially calling a curse here because there really wasn't one. Allen Iverson graced all 4 of these covers and nothing really happened to him specifically. He took the least talented finals team to 5 games against the Lakers, won an MVP award, and enjoyed a reign as one of the most exciting players in NBA history. If you want to call being stuck on a team with no all-star help a curse, then I guess you could reach and say that, but for the most part I doubt anyone would say the curse actually affected Allen Iverson. But then comes NBA 2K5, and what you'll notice here is that the cover curse gradually got worse for the players it affected by the year. Big Ben Wallace graced the cover of 2K5, and things had gone pretty well up to that point. The game was released in September, just 3 months after he helped Detroit upset Kobe and Shaq's Lakers, and they'd kept the core intact, which meant they could make a good run at a repeat. Just 2 months later, the Pistons were involved with the most infamous event in NBA history, dubbed the Malice at the Palace. Despite suspensions not affecting Detroit that much, they'd make it back to the NBA Finals only to lose a heartbreaker to the Spurs in the 7th game. I'll say it before you do, this one is a bit of a reach, but it at least deserved the mention here because that was both his and Detroit's last visit to the NBA Finals, and he would only make one All-Star team before going to Chicago and experiencing an extremely rapid decline in his career. I mean, he was only 30 years old when he got put on the cover of 2K5, and by 2K7 he wasn't even considered an elite player anymore. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. But now we move on to where we can say the curse was really tangible, and it's ironic because this was also around the time that 2K started to give Live a run for the money in the video game market. For both 2K6 and 2K7, Shaquille O'Neal would grace the covers shortly after his departure from the Lakers. The curse obviously didn't kick in on 2K6 because that was the year that Shaq won his final ring, placing him above Kobe Bryant for the time being, but also remember there was no PS3 yet. When 2K7 came out and it was on the 360 and the PS3, I'd say that was the official beginning of 2K making a move on Live for the top spot. That was also a year in which Miami's championship team completely dismantled out of nowhere. Dwayne Wade's 06 finals had people comparing him to Jordan, and it looked like he and Shaq could go for at least one more, but the 07 season would see both Shaq and Wade deal with debilitating injuries, and neither one of them would play more than 51 games in the season. This would leave the supporting cast around the duo to fend for itself, and needless to say, that was hopeless as Miami went from NBA champions to a 15-67 record by the 08 season when Shaq was finally traded to Phoenix. Shaq being on the cover of 2K was also basically the end of him being a useful piece on any team whatsoever. He could still play while he was on Phoenix, but the decline was pretty rapid. If you look at his numbers and weight difference from the time he was put on the cover of 2K6 to the time he landed in Cleveland, it was like 2 different worlds. I guess it was due to come with age, but the case is still in suspicion here. I'm not even going to reach for anything in 2K8 because that was one of Chris Paul's best seasons and a lot of people thought he should have won the MVP. So moving on to 2K9, if this one isn't a curse then I don't know what is. The Celtics traded for Garnett before the 2008 season, and he'd had a healthy career up to that point. Not only did he propel Boston to the title that year, but he also won Defensive Player of the Year, so many people thought the Celtics would eventually go on to three-peat. Then Garnett got put on that goddamn cover, and it was all downhill from there. Boston had an excellent start to the 09 season, and it didn't seem like many teams had a chance. And then out of nowhere, Garnett injured his knee on a non-contact play jumping for a routine alley-oop. I've watched that clip 1,000 times and I still don't have a clue what actually happened. From there, he'd missed the 2009 playoffs, causing Boston to lose in the second round, and when he did come back, he was simply never the same. He had flashes, he had great moments in the playoffs, but KG from 2008 was never to be seen or heard from again, and so Boston ended up about a championship or 2 short from what they should have had. I don't want to talk about this one anymore, let's move on please. NBA 2K10 is interesting because I feel that it's a bit of a reach, but it's still worth visiting. Kobe Bryant wound up on the cover that year, and I often found myself wondering if that was really him or not because he was like 3 or 4 shades too light. Anyways, Kobe was at the height of his powers for his 30s. He'd won the championship in 09 and actually won the championship again the same year he was on the cover for 2K10. But that was the last we'd ever see of Kobe Bryant in the NBA Finals, and if you would have asked somebody in 2010 how many more finals the Lakers were gonna make, you would have definitely been told at least one more. Phil Jackson was notorious for winning his championships in threes. But nope. The Lakers went through the 2011 season, picked up the second seed with nearly 60 wins, and then got miraculously swept by Dirk's Mavericks, and that same summer, the CP3 trade got vetoed, which really changed things quite a bit for LA. I'm betting that most Laker fans would have liked to have saw Chris Paul and Kobe play together over that failed super team experiment of 2013, and with all of those extra miles that Kobe had to put on his body from 2010 and on, his career ended prematurely with the snap of his Achilles. So now that you've seen this part of the video, you finally know that you can blame everything that happened for the rest of Kobe Bryant's career on him being on the cover of 2K10. So we're gonna skip both 2K11 and 12 because those were both legend covers, and we move on to 13 where we will again reach for things that might or might not be there. 2K13 featured a trio of stars including Blake Griffin, Kevin Durant, and Derrick Rose. The obvious one to go for here would be Rose, but I think that breaks some kind of rule since he actually tore his ACL before he was announced to be a cover athlete for this season. Well, if we're gonna reach, then we might as well do it properly, right? It was his choice not to come back for the 2013 season while he rehabbed his knee, so that's why he played 0 games there. But he also never made a proper comeback from the injuries, causing us to ask, what would have happened if D-Rose hadn't have been on the cover of 2K13? And in the same calendar year, his comeback was cut short by a torn meniscus, and I don't need to recap his lengthy medical history since then. So what about the other guys? Well, we'll get to Kevin Durant in a minute, but if you really wanted to reach, Blake Griffin did get hurt that year in the playoffs against the Grizzlies, which cost him the series, but I'm not really counting that here, it was just an ankle. NBA 2K14, wow, this just might be my favorite cover curse. The Miami Heat were killing it when LeBron got put on the cover, and it seemed like the basketball world might belong to him forever. If you rewind the clock back to the start of the 2014 season, you could have easily convinced somebody that Miami was going to keep retooling around the Big Three for years to come, and it didn't seem like anybody was close to dethroning LeBron as the best in the league. Then came that cover curse, and Miami's run ended almost at the snap of a finger. In OKC, Kevin Durant had free reigns to do whatever he wanted with Westbrook hurt, so he took the MVP from James with an incredible season. This was also the year that we really started to see Dwayne Wade slow down, which made Miami much less super than they originally were. They were dismantled by San Antonio in a 5-game series with some of the best passing I'd ever seen, and LeBron miraculously left the Heat to go back to Cleveland, while Miami basically crumbled after that with an unfortunate series of injuries that seemed to have come out of nowhere. I promise you this one was crazy to experience because there was a point in my life where I couldn't imagine Miami being a bad team, and then LeBron got put on that cover and the rest was history. Now we finally get back to Kevin Durant, and the 2K15 cover curse wasted absolutely no time getting to work. The season hadn't even started yet when he injured his foot during training camp, and this basically wrapped up the Thunder season on the house. Sure, he came back, but then he got injured again and had to miss the entire season, so not only did KD not get the chance to build on his MVP season, but the Thunder missed out on yet another year for him and Westbrook to try to put a solid run together. That was probably the worst cover curse since Shaq in 2K7. NBA 2K16 is another trio case, but it was a bit different from 13 because you could pick from Curry, Harden, or Anthony Davis, and the curse struck each and every one of them in a different way. We'll go from best scenario to worst. James Harden didn't actually get hurt. He had a good season, but the Rockets severely regressed from where they were in 2015. A lot of people thought Harden should have won the 2015 MVP, but it went to Curry, and 16 was supposed to be his year to prove that that was the wrong choice. Instead, he came into that season playing terribly, shooting only 40% through the first month of the season, and he also looked a bit out of shape in my opinion. Although his play would eventually improve, the Rockets wouldn't, and they just barely got into the playoffs that year as they went from a Western Conference Finals team to an A seed. Anthony Davis was next, but it was really more of the same for him. He'd been known to be injury prone anyways, so him only appearing in 61 games that season was a surprise to absolutely nobody. But this time, his injury set the Pelicans back as they'd fall from a playoff team to a 30-win team, and they really haven't had a ton of luck since then. And finally, on to Steph Curry. His was a bit cruel because the unanimous MVP season he put up was visually and statistically one of the most impressive seasons ever. Of course, as fate would have it, he got hurt twice as soon as the playoffs started, and by the time the finals came around, he was playing nothing like he had in the regular season, so that pretty much caused the Warriors to go on and cap off their 73-win season with the infamous 3-1 lead fiasco. Definitely had to be the cover curse. And now for a different phase of the cover curse that I like to call place the player you want traded here. Paul George made the cover of 2K17 and got traded to Oklahoma the very next summer. In 2K18, Kyrie Irving got a double dose of the curse. First was the part where 2K had to do a jersey swap because he actually got traded after they'd already released the art of him in a Cleveland jersey on the cover. But not only was he traded, after helping Boston to an amazing start of the season, his knee just came undone and he wouldn't be a part of the team that was well on its way to the NBA Finals. The one time LeBron's team looked like it couldn't win the East and Kyrie was not there to take advantage. Oh, that also means that the only two actively playing Boston Celtics to ever grace the cover of 2K both got screwed. Oh yeah, and guess who else is on the cover? DeMar DeRozan for the international release. Not only could he not get his top-seeded Raptors past LeBron's worst team in years, but then he got traded from a city he loved and a team he was loyal to after the GM told him he wasn't going anywhere. So apparently 2K got the memo for 2K19. They announced ahead of time that LeBron was going to be on the cover of the special edition, but instead of wasting time with him in a Cleveland jersey, they just put his head on the case to save time. But it didn't help anything. He still left just like the last time when he was on the cover of 2K14. And that just leaves Giannis and Ben Simmons on this year's covers. Will they succumb to the curse, or are they the chosen ones? Bucks fans, Sixers fans, prepare yourselves.